everyone around the world to tonight's episode of the Cameron Files, broadcast exclusively on KGRA Radio every week, right here on your contact for the best UFO talk radio on the planet. Tonight, Grant talks with Steve Mera, a huge name in the UK, absolutely huge name. You Google Steve, and you're gonna be there a while in the name of the paranormal and the mysteries of the world. And he's all the way across the pond. He stayed up into the middle of the night to be on the show. But first, let's ring Grant, get Grant in here, and see what's been going on in the world of UFOs. Grant, how are things doing with you, and how are things going in the world of UFOs this week?
It's an exciting time. Lots of stuff still happening. I'll just quickly give you a little update before you disappear here.
Yes.
There's a bunch of there's a series of disclosure initiatives, and not just the TSSA. I'm hearing all sorts of stuff. We've got a thing on my Whitehouse UFO. I'm not sure if it's up yet. Whitehouse UFO YouTube channel with Joe Firmage has now come public. He's starting to talk. I've got a guy who I've interviewed a couple of times. Buddy from New York, who's interviewed him at length about his experience in the 1990s, where he had a being in the room, where he had this .com executive guy, $2.5 billion computer company shuts her down to go and do anti-gravity or gravity control, space flight, stuff like that, and he's now got this this sort of instrument, whatever. They're doing tests in Salt Lake City, right by you. And the CIA's involved, and we're on that story. The TSSA thing, you probably heard all the stories. This thing looks like it's legit. They've got a lot of material. There's Senate people supposedly involved. I've heard White House people. There's one figure running around $500 million. I don't know how true that is. They've already got some funding has been sort of thrown out there.
Wow.
The major media is still contacting me on a bunch of different stories. The Zendra story, the Joe Firmage story, the Pandolfi story, all these kind of things. And now I've heard from NASA that there may be a disclosure initiative coming there as well. So it's been a very, very busy time. I mean, it's like one email after another, one phone call after another, trying to get this all together. Nobody's really ready to go real public with stuff yet, but it's an exciting time.
I tell you, Grant, we talked about this a long time ago when it came to confirmation, disclosure, that whole bag of worms. But we all did kind of have different input on it, but we all did agree in the end that when disclosure came, it was going to come in a massive wave. Almost like people were going to be falling over each other to do it.
Yeah, it's almost like the green light has been given. Once the New York Times did the story, it's like there's a green light that you can sort of talk about it. You can sort of out stories and stuff like that, and nobody really cares. I mean, it's sort of like it's always been this way, and it's only been this way since last December, when everything seemed to change in ufology.
So we're just, it's sort of like releasing the kook factor and just sort of letting that all
where
go.
People can talk.
Yeah.
And I have a rabbit hole meeting that people might want to come to if they contact me at whitehouseuFO@gmail.com. I'm hosting I hold these rabbit hole meetings where we put it on Zoom. Anybody can come on there. We can hold up to 50 people. People turn their cameras off and their audio off, and people just talk about stuff. And some of these people that have got these stories are going to be on this Saturday at 2 o'clock Eastern time. I'm going to host one of these things. So anybody who wants to be on the mailing list and want to get in on this thing and watch people talk about this kind of stuff, it's this Saturday at 2. So, and some of these people that are telling these stories will maybe on there.
Absolutely fantastic. That's fantastic, Grant.
Not as exciting as the guest I got tonight, though.
No, not at all. And we've had him on, and he's all the way over in the UK in the middle of the night, and he is a fascinating individual. I'm really looking forward to what he has to say on the program tonight. So, a lot of our listeners know what I'm saying when they sit down with their favorite beverage and they're ready to get involved and engage into a nice talk radio show with a good guest. And then you have to stop about every 7 minutes and go to commercials and everything else. Tonight, KGRA is going to bring the Cameron Files to you commercial free for the final remainder of the show. There's no stops, guys. You have the floor, and you do your thing. Don't you even for 1 second worry about having to stop or anything else. So we're commercial free, gang.
Okay, thanks, Ray.
All right, Grant.
Thank you to my guest, Steve Mera. I'm just going to do a little bit of a bio because Ray sort of pointed out, if you do look up Steve Mera and UFOs or paranormal, this guy has, I'm amazed at the stuff this guy has done. He's been in UFOs and the paranormal since a very early age. He's got a degree in electrical engineering, and he's one of the things I'm going to bring up, he worked for NATO as a telecommunications officer. There's one story he told me that I'd like to sort of revisit. He's been started all sorts of different organizations, the Manchester Aerial Phenomena Investigation Team. He was with Bufora. He started the British Investigator Training Course. He has a magazine called Paranormal, which I think has got 110 issues that have been done. Steve can talk about it, but you can actually get on the mailing list. This is free. You can get this full-length sort of magazine. He's been with piles and piles of researchers, piles and piles of radio shows, TV shows, articles. And so I'll skip all that and just say I met him at length a couple months back. We were outside of London, England, and Steve was we were in a lobby in a hotel outside of London, and Steve started telling stories, and I was just riveted with this. He's an incredible storyteller, has an incredible amount of material. I was quite amazed at the stuff that he knew. So welcome, Steve, and once again, sorry that I got you here at 1 o'clock. Next time, if we do it, we'll do it a pre-tape so you can get some sleep at night.
Oh, thank you, Grant. Thank you for that great introduction as well.
Yeah, wonderful. Let's start with your magazine. You have a magazine called Phenomena Magazine. Explain to people how this started, why it's free, and what kind of articles you do in there. It's not just UFOs, right?
It isn't just UFOs. I mean, we started off just in UFOs. The magazine's now about 110 issues in. We started it quite a number of years back as simply just an in-house magazine for organizations. But the demand was high for people that wanted it over the internet. So we completely switched from a printed magazine to an internet-based e-zine. And now we distribute to 12 countries in 4 different languages, and around coming up to 1.9 million readers per year now. The magazine is completely free, comes out every month at the end of each month. You can obtain that from phenomenamagazine.co.uk. All the back issues are also available to download. The magazine covers all aspects of the strange and the profound. We realized quite a number of years ago that there's a very common thread throughout ufology consisting of the paranormal. So we clearly demonstrated that in the magazine by introducing paranormal and supernatural and all sorts of things into that. But it's still very prominently a UFO magazine. We do cover a lot of UFO subjects in there, but we also cater for the paranormal side as well.
Yeah. When I was with you in England, you were talking that you do research with your wife, and I remember you saying at one point the best evidence for the supernatural or the paranormal was not UFOs. You were talking about, was it voice phenomena? Can you explain what you and your wife were doing and the story you were telling to us there?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I was involved in a project known as Phenomena Project, which was a continued studies of the skull experiments with advanced studies into the paranormal. And we had run a number of tests in regarding communications. Electronic voice phenomena is one reference to it. Instrumental transcommunication is another. And we'd recorded very clear vocal responses to questions that we were asking. But what we realized was, through test procedures, that we could run 3 pieces of identical equipment, which was owned by Olympus. We were backed by Olympus at the time, which was good because they could demonstrate the capabilities of this equipment. And we got 3 different vocals across 3 pieces of equipment running instantaneously at the same time, and none of us heard anything at the time until playback, which would indicate that the phenomena was not harmonic. What we're referring to now is the study of transplacement, a phenomena that has the capabilities of directly interacting with equipment, placing the vocals directly onto the equipment, which would mean then that the capabilities of people being able to hear things sometimes when not recorded would suggest that maybe even humans have the capabilities of being instruments. So we went into the studies of inner ear, should we say, inner ear frequencies and manipulation, very similar to what we see in cochlear devices, which are connected to people's heads now that have struggled or had loss of hearing since an early age, and the cochlear devices, which bypasses the actual ear, and enters into the eardrum, through into a channel which is liquid and hairs which oscillate to create frequencies and sounds, which is interpreted into language. We believe the same mechanisms are being utilized by this phenomena when people are clearly hearing things which aren't being recorded in the harmonic range. So we are delving into a new area of research here in regards to paranormal phenomena.
And you still do this, or you're doing this all the time, or what kind of operation are you running for this kind of thing?
We're still running on the project. Yes, we're conducting experiments. We're also looking into psychokinetic energies, influences, that sort of thing. And of course, what we found is a direct correlation between heightened emotion and experiences. What we would consider is that also that there's a very close combination between this phenomena and what you might refer to as magnetic anomalies. And there are plenty of those throughout the world, and you cross-reference them in regards to paranormal phenomena, and not just paranormal, but ufological phenomena as well. You get a very, very high consistency in regarding a correlation between these two.
Yeah, and you talked about this in terms of the Nazca stuff, which we'll mention in a minute. Well, what do you think the connection is to UFOs, like in terms of the I guess you would call it survival research, or what do you is there a connection?
Well, I've kind of come full circle on the UFO subject, Grant, over the years. My mentors taught me back in 1983 that we were dealing with a very nuts and bolts phenomena. It was traveling from distant planets to Earth, and they were extraterrestrial in origin. Now, as time's gone on, it seems to be that after coming full circle on this, you learn that this phenomena is a metaphysical phenomena. It's not as simple as nuts and bolts phenomena. Yeah. It does have paranormal attributes, as you well know, and of course, what we also find is that there's a large lack of evidence supporting anything that's coming to Earth from deep space. My studies would suggest that this phenomena has been always with us. Maybe we're the new kids on the block, to be honest with you. This phenomena seems to be interdimensional, probably, metaphysical, definitely. Jump in and jump out. Maybe, they're more terrestrial than what we actually think. Maybe we're looking in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Where do you stand on survival of death? Do you have ideas there that you've developed over the years, working that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the problem we've got with Grant is that it's very difficult in regarding the word afterlife. And what we can say for absolute certainty is that they are communications with intelligent voices. The problematics of this is that there's a lot of we don't know what are the authentic. What we're told is the information authentic. We will never know if that is authentic information. We've certainly had confirmation through vocal responses that some of these things we're capturing, aren't always telling the truth, and do play tricks and say funny things. And of course, those responses are usually very short because it would seem that they're utilizing pockets of energy. So there is no very long conversations drawn out with these responses. They're usually short and sweet. But we have engaged enough over these experiments to ask questions and gain responses. We don't know how true that is, but nevertheless, we're actually absolutely communicating with some type of intelligence. As to what that represents is a whole new category.
Can you give an example of a good one that comes across in terms of something that sort of set everybody back in terms of communication?
I mean, we've had communications, and when asking questions, we got a response saying most of us didn't know you existed, which I thought was a very profound response. We've had things such as, when we've asked questions, do you feel cold, or the heat, the warmth, and apparently the answer came back as yes, they do. Whatever these things are, communication sometimes abruptly stopped, and that was because a reference to beings of light. These were referred to as lightertons at the time. I couldn't find any references over the internet about that. This was a name that was used when these beings of light seemed to come in, and of course all communications seemed to stop. We've asked questions about these so-called lightertons, and we were told these beings of light see and know all, and there's a limitation of information we can obtain. So it would seem to be some form of governance. As to how true all that is, we don't know, but we've got mountains of documentation of communications that have taken place and the things we've been told.
Have you interacted with any sort of say voice phenomena that's claiming to be ET or extraterrestrial, or that sort of ties into the UFO thing, or is it?
Yeah, good question. Absolutely one of the same. Absolutely no difference. It would seem that communication, even through, if you want to refer to them as extraterrestrial, then yeah, it would seem that they're one of the same. Very similar to Aleister Crowley's days with his lamb, should we say, which was a very similar entity. In the skull experiment, there was Blue, which again was another entity. And yes, it would seem that we've had information, but we don't understand what that information consists of. But it would seem that the capabilities of this conscious connection through the realms of the paranormal and seances, or ET channeling, it would seem to fall under the same category.
Wow, you're doing a lecture, and I didn't really realize that they had this, the Expanding Human Consciousness Expo in where Race came from, Arkansas. You're going to be in Eureka Springs, I think August the 3rd through the 5th. Julia Cannon, who's the daughter of Dolores Cannon, and they run the big conference that I go to every year in spring. But you're doing a lecture there. Can you talk about that lecture?
Absolutely.
And you can tie it in if it's involved. You have an investigator's training course, so I guess you would go through the whole thing about the different phenomena and what to look for and stuff like that.
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, what we're doing is we're putting a 21st century spin on ufology. We're trying to bring it up to where it should be. Unfortunately, it's been a bit of a static subject for quite a long time, but there is new information that should be coming forward. What we're finding is these correlations with the UFO phenomena, cryptid sightings, paranormal phenomena, and disappearances, as well as high rates of suicides in certain locations, which you can scan for now using specialized software known as magnetic anomalies. And we've been working on with these magnetic anomalies for quite some time, to the point where we're devising actual specialized software to help us learn more about these locations. And of course, what we're trying to do throughout this new UFO course is put it all out on the table and let people know that that there is new information. There's new ideas and new theories that need to come forward. We have to start looking at a phenomena in a different aspect, rather than considering it, something as a nuts and bolts phenomena traveling from a distant stars. There may be other things that are involved here, and we obviously go down the metaphysical phenomena, the conscious connection between the UFO phenomena and the witnesses. There seems to be a correlation sometimes between the observer and the phenomena, and they're aware of each other in some cases, to the point where even UFOs seem to be aware you've got a camera in your hand. This was only demonstrated a couple of months back when we were at Contact in the Desert, where we were there doing a number of lectures, and of course one evening we decided to check our maps, and we found a location a very high magnetic anomaly, only 7 miles away.
Wow.
So whilst hundreds and hundreds or maybe thousands of people at the conference, we were up on Canyon Road, wow. in the Palm Desert, in the heart of a magnetic anomaly. We were there for 30 minutes. We had cameras in our hands, and we had nothing at all apart from satellites going past. As soon as we placed our cameras back into the vehicle, 2 minutes later, there was a huge object seemed to appear in the sky. It was burning like a welder's arc. It fired boom, boom, boom 3 times at us with a light. We engaged it with a light source back. It moved across, did it 3 times again, moved across 3 times again, and it just blinked out. The incident only happened for maybe a minute, but it was seen as soon as we placed our cameras back in the vehicle, there it was. I mean, when you've been a ufologist for so long, we get impatient. We don't stay here. So after half an hour, we've had enough. But we were shocked. We were really, really shocked. And it proves the point that it's not just, a phenomena. It's also just a matter of also going to certain locations where this phenomenon seems to be associated with. Now, we don't know if they're utilizing these magnetic anomalies coming in and out of them. What I can say is that back in the 1980s, Colonel Philip Corso mentioned that at that time, in the early 80s, that the US government were looking into at least 7 of these large magnetic anomalies, and it was in connection to UFO activity. There seems to be a definite correlation between these two. So we're going to be providing a lot more information about that, about the new types of software and good equipment that you can utilize whilst you're out in these locations, and basically how to utilize them. In other words, we can actually get a head start on this phenomenon now. Just for once in our lifetime, we can actually do that. It doesn't have to be so random, and that's what we're trying to explain to people. The other side of the coin is that there's a lot of people that talk about very good experiences from ETs and stuff. I totally agree with that, but there is another side to that coin, which is the deceptive side. There is a deceptive side to some of this phenomena. In many cases, there has been people that have been injured, and of course, there's a sinister side to some of these experiences as well. So we have to sort of portray the whole subject for what it is.
How many of these magnetic anomalies have you been able to identify around the world? And is there real big ones, like famous ones, compared to smaller ones?
Yeah, I mean, in Eureka Springs, you're right in the middle one, coincidentally. But if you cross check, I mean, we've got thousands on file, but Skinwalker Ranch, absolutely, very positive anomaly. If you look at the Mothman incidents, the location of Point Pleasant, again, high magnetic anomalies. The Flatwoods UFO incident, again, the Kentucky incident with the large-eared beings attacked a farmhouse, again, Hopkinsville, bang in the middle of a magnetic anomaly. It goes through all over the world. The lights that take place over Hasdalen in Norway, again, right in a positive anomaly. They're all over. There are thousands of correlations you can make, and we've done this just by tests alone. So what we actually also found, Grant, is that there are disappearances also taking place in these magnetic anomalies. Now, on our statistics, there's 4.5 million people which have disappeared, and that's about the amount of people that live in New Zealand, as an example. Most of these people are disappearing in national parks, in certain areas of national parks. I know it's been covered. It's also been covered by David Pilardes in his Missing 411 books, which are fascinating. Yeah. And David's definitely onto something, because when what David didn't realize at the time writing those books is that we correlated all his accounts to our magnetic anomaly maps, and it would seem that these disappearances are happening mostly in these areas of magnetic anomalies. And some people which have witnessed light phenomena in these anomalies have seen like a very large ball of light, but when looking through a camera at them, they've claimed to have been able to see a different landscape through them on the other side, which is very interesting, because things like that were also occasionally reported in the area of Skinwalker Ranch.
If people wanted to, or let's go to is that what your lecture's about in Eureka Springs, about your course and these
Yes.
anomalies and that sort of thing. If
Yes.
people want to take your course, I mean, they can go to Eureka Springs, August the 3rd through the 5th. Do you have it online, or where would people take your course?
Well,
Because your course sounds different than MUFON.
Yeah. I mean, it's a completely different course. We're talking of a very it goes from basic right through to professional 300-page course with all hyperlinked information in there to different websites, photographs, videos, and information. The course launches in September in the UK. However, we're deciding to bring the course to Eureka Springs to allow people to get a taste of the course. I'm going to be providing the course for them on disc on that day. And we'll be actually doing a number of lectures in regarding some of these new discoveries.
Wow, fascinating. It just occurred to me, you're in Britain. We were talking in America, you have a lot of sort of rumored stories about the government with this, the government with that. What's the situation in Great Britain? What do you know about British government involvement? I mean, are they stupid? Are they working with the Americans? Do they know anything?
Well, years ago, I mean, I had a very close contact in the Ministry of Defence, and she said, Steve, if you start digging down, you'll eventually hit American soil. And
oh, wow.
and that led me to start thinking about, who really does pull the strings in certain military aspects throughout the UK. The Americans have always had a strong presence in the UK, Anglo-American facilities, exactly. As you know, I've worked with NATO, and even during my time at NATO, there were some number which going back 28 years ago, or not longer. Were certain things which were secret then, which seem to be coming into the public realm now, which it would indicate, advanced technology, which when only in later life when you start to hear about this technology being applied to the UFOs and certain types of aircraft which might be experimental, it certainly puts a light on for me, because obviously I've been working in those sorts of fields. The UFO phenomena on this side of the world is prominent. The UK has always been prominent for UFO phenomena. However, the UK government have gone very quiet on the matter since they've closed the door on people being able to report UFOs and obtain information from them. Now, what I can say is that over a series of released documents from the UK, the Ministry of Defence wants to be seen to be transparent, and that they've claimed to have released all their documentation, which is not true. I can certainly vouch for that, because we have our own information. I'll give you an example. An incident that took place in February of 1998 involving 3 police officers at Watch 2. Triangular craft in the sky in close proximity. And we investigated the case. The Ministry of Defence received a full report and information and affidavits. That has not been released to the public. So it would seem, though they want to be seen to be transparent, they're holding the good stuff back, which is no surprise, obviously. But on the official side, it's quiet in the UK, but the phenomena continues to take place.
Do you think they're reporting to the Americans, or do you think they're sort of, that's sort of the impression I get, because I'm in Canada, is that they just sort of salute and do. They may have access to some material, but they're just sort of like a link in the chain.
I think they are a link in the chain, absolutely. I think that, if something really significant takes place, then yes, I believe that information is truncated over to the US, absolutely.
You mentioned working with NATO. You told a story in Great Britain about these biocircuits, which I think interested me because of the idea that this consciousness aspect, that, there's those ideas that you have AI intelligence, with hardware. And to me, you could never have it with just hardware. You would need some sort of biological piece to the puzzle to make it think. So you saw biological circuits. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, when I joined the NATO, I became a telecommunications officer. And I signed 2 official secrets acts. We entered into a contract, NATO, with Marconi. And we were provided these new racking systems that come in to support these computer boards. Our job was to maintain the computer boards, initiate them, fit them, and make sure they're running, sustainable. And of course, these were correlated. They were automatically initiated by satellites in orbit. 3 satellites which were non-listed, military satellites. When we say non-listed, there's no ID. There's no ID number for them. They don't exist.
Yeah.
What we can say is that they're about the size of a football field when fully operational. They're probably, I would suggest, probably run at that time by the National Security Agency. And we do know that these satellites have the capabilities of picking up a digital watch in the Amazon jungle. So, trying to identify where missing planes have gone would have been very easy. So which makes me think why certain things happen. But the technology that we were involved with the boards was there were biological circuits on these boards. In fact, we nicknamed them bioboards. That was the nickname. Wow. And there was heavy compartmentalization. My friends I was working with, I didn't know their jobs. They didn't know my jobs when we were separated. We weren't supposed to talk to each other about that. And my job was making sure that they were installed into the racking systems and initiated by the satellites in orbit. Now it was Marconi who were involved in this contract. The circuitry, from what I can remember, was plasma memory, was a biological memory cells, which were like a pink fluid. And I said nothing for years, and I wouldn't have done until a couple of years ago. I read an article on the internet that IBM were talking about releasing plasma cell memory. And of course, once I read it online, I thought, I'm okay to talk about it now. And, but that was a long time ago. And I was considering, if we were dealing with biological circuit boards, these things would make sure that they kind of look after themselves, in a sense of speaking. And I was thinking, if you can apply that technology, and of course, as years have gone by, I've heard stories about, some UFOs have biological systems on. I remember listening very carefully to David Adair when he claimed he was taken at a young age to Area 51 and shown a very large engine that seemed to be biologically or some form of biologics in there, which were controlled through the consciousness. And that fascinated me because I draw a comparison with biological circuits, which is something I was dealing with 28 years ago.
Yeah. I sometimes when I lecture, I show a video and people can find it by, all you have to do is Google search rat brain and F-22. And this was at the University of Southern Florida. And this is 2004 White World technology, where they would take 10,000 neurons from a rat brain, put them in a little petri dish, let this thing start to grow for 3 days, start to interact. All these neurons are interacting. And then they'd wire in an F-22 simulator and teach this 10,000 it was 20,000 neurons for a rat brain. And it's flying this simulator. And then they would take the weather and they make the worst weather and wind conditions and all this kind of stuff. And this rat brain continued to fly this F-22 simulator, which gives you the idea that there's great potential and you could maybe see the technology may not be so much the secrecy, not so much the nuts and bolts, but the sort of the consciousness aspect of this thing of what you can actually do once you understand what's actually going on. Absolutely,
Grant. I totally agree. The biggest problem with any aircraft is the pilots. Yeah, because it's our capabilities, our limitations, should we say, limitations to flight, limitations to quick response, and of course, the A-class pilots, should we say, are very short-lived. There's only a number of years they can do this and maintain those reactions. And, of course, the regularly tests, and of course, those deteriorate very quickly. There's only a very short gap where they are A-class. I mean, an uncle of mine was a Top Gun trainer. But he explained to me that it can literally, you're an A-class pilot for probably only a few years, wow. And then you'll start deteriorating. You'll peak, and then you'll start to get worse as time goes on. And of course, there was always those limitations with human responses, and of course the limitations of how the human body can react to certain flights and inertia.
Wow. A couple days ago, related to this, you posted about Delta Lambda. Can you talk a bit about that?
Well, yeah. I mean, what we've decided to do is we were building a discovery mapping system. It's an app which incorporates the monitoring of every type of conditions, environmental conditions, taking place in magnetic anomalies. The reason being that it not only does it track the individual, but automatically it recognizes when you're in one of these anomalies and switches your phone on and starts recording data. And that data will come back to a central unit, which is correlating all the information for us to try and find out more what is actually going on in these locations. The problematics of doing this, which we stumbled on, was because there's going to be such a huge amount of data, then how we were going to store it. Now, the problematics of this was that we'd realised very quickly that it's going to be so large, the data coming from all these different people utilising this app, that we'd have to use some form of compression tool.
Yeah.
But the best compression tools that we've got in the world will only compress to 1/6 its size, and we wanted something which is really a lot better than that. So luckily for us, we're in touch with some programmers which have been advanced programmers for like 20, 30 years, 40 years between them. And what they've done is they've managed to completely rewrite the process of data compression to binary code algorithm, which means now that we can actually decompress to 1,000th the size, which is a revolutionary piece of software. We stumbled across this because it's something that we needed for the Discovery Mapping System app. And of course, when we realized the potential of this, because that's going to allow someone to put this software on the mobile phones and turn it from 32 gigabytes to 32 terabytes. It's going to allow people to put it across their laptops, which is 1 terabyte, and turn it to 1 petabyte, which is 1,000 terabytes. We realized that the potential of this it could be massive to the world in regard to data, just alone for NASA. For an example, I mean, the amount of data that they're using just to send high stream photography back from satellites in orbit or around the moon, which would mean that they can take now 4K and stream that back to us immediately. This new type of data compression tool, which is pretty revolutionary. We've just started an Indiegogo campaign on Delta Lambda, which allows it. What we want to do is we want to get it out to the world. And we don't want this manipulation. We've all heard about military complexes and the industry getting hold of this new type of technology and it filtering down to the General public 50 years later. Well, we're dead against that, as you can well imagine, Grant. What we're going to do is we're going to allow everybody who wants to come to the campaign to get that software for $10. It's as simple as that, because we want to share it to the world and make sure everybody got it in their hands. Then that cuts out the big companies coming in and trying to monopolize. But it's time for change, and we stumbled across this. It's going to work fantastic. So like I said, that campaign is currently running on Indiegogo at the moment. We've had a great response from people on this. We think it's going to be quite revolutionary. And once that's out, which is going to be December, it's going to be Christmas Day. Then it's going to be applied to the Discovery Mapping System. And this is an app which is I would suggest is great for any ufologist to have. It just simply loads onto their phones, and no matter where they are traveling, it will alert them in a magnetic anomaly and automatically start recording data, which will let them know if anything's going on in that location.
Oh, my goodness. Fantastic. Well, I'm going to make sure that when we post it on my YouTube that we'll put the link there, and I hope Race can do the same thing for KGRA, is put a link in there, because I saw your promo on that, and that's pretty amazing stuff. If that turns out you can pull this thing off, I mean, that's amazing. Well,
we've got a working model, Grant. What we did is we decided to take a 2.5 gigabyte movie, and it came back 2.1K.
Wow!
So we've achieved what we wanted to achieve. So all we've got to do now is make sure it's wrapped up nicely in a nice little piece of software for people to utilize, and away we go.
Well, I'm proud to know you, man. Wow, that's amazing. Let's get to some of the things you've become famous for in the last few months. The one, and I guess you can just quickly talk about it. You are the guy where they got the photo of the balloon for the TSSA. Can you quickly tell that story?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, this started appearing over the internet, as most people know, is referred to as the Tic Tac UFO photograph. And it was actually, I realized what that was as soon as it came out on the internet. And I was very confused as to why it's been tied in to the Pentagon information that was announced and the UFO video. And I was a bit confused over that. So I started to let people know that there's obviously some confusion that's happened here. I know to the Stars Academy was also involved, and I was emailing them and saying, guys, you've made a mistake. This actual photograph was taken in the UK, was taken around about 2005, and it's a photograph of a number one novelty balloon, a silver number one novelty balloon. Yeah. And it was taken during a sunny day. Now, what people had done is they'd seen the video of this UFO that was released at the time. And because it was kind of over the sea, the photograph, I talked to a number of people, and they said, well, I thought I was seeing a UFO, and in the background was the sea. And it was taken maybe from a jet above it. And I said, no, what you're actually seeing there is the blue is the sky, and somebody taking a photograph upwards towards it. Yeah. And of course, the unusual shape was just because it was tumbling in the sky. And it took us 3 months of emailing out. Eventually, I had to get in touch with UK press because nobody seemed to be getting back to me. And this, I was concerned. The fact is that someone's making such a mistake here that it could be, it might be bad for them. And of course, there was a lot of promotion about this particular photograph tied in with on news items, even in the US, in Los Angeles, for one of them, I believe. I emailed George Knapp, and he unfortunately didn't get back to me. And I ended up contacting the UK press. They ran with a story. The UK press tried to get in touch to the Stars Academy on 2 or 3 occasions, but they didn't get a response back. And I think, if you remember rightly, I ended up talking to you, Grant, to let you know the situation, what was going on. So there was obviously some confusion there over that particular photograph.
Yeah, it's not exactly something you want to be famous for, providing that photo, but it's like, you got dragged into it, unfortunately. Now, I've only left you a few minutes, so let's get to the Nazca Mummies. And first of all, can you describe, because it just drives me nuts when people call these things mummies. You're the only guy, I think, to point out these things are not mummies.
No, they're not. They're actually, we're dealing with, there's 2 bodies, 2 real bodies, which have their organs intact, and there are a lot of small ones which are completely manufactured. And what we've found is we've been backwards and forwards doing this investigation a few times because it's just been going on and on and on. And of course, what we wanted to make sure was done properly is that the right type of scientists are utilised. I know that there's been a lot of scientists that have come forward, or doctors, should we say, have come forward from South America, claiming wild claims, of these things being alien hybrids and all sorts of different things. And what we've actually found is that, and it is a shame that a lot of these doctors really are very credible and have been utilised in similar cases like this before. The Boswell Slides incident, which was one of them. And what we had to do is to conclude this case, and we had to conclude this because when we get involved in a case like this, we have to call it as it is. And there's nothing more that I want this to be absolute evidence of some type of extraterrestrial. But the unfortunate thing is, after talking to scientists, and this is the latest thing on this, Grant, because we've talked on this before. Yeah. We've recently, the last week, talked with scientists from Russia and from France, which are professors in anthropology and paleontology, which have absolutely 100% confirmed that even the 2 bodies have been manipulated, utilising other human bones, which is a terrible thing, and it's a terrible act, and it's quite horrific. And I was quite shocked. And the information's all come forward. We've got all the analysis from them, and we're just delivering that information. I mean, it's unfortunate, you could say it's been the biggest hoax of the 21st century. The amount of interest these bodies have had over the internet has been astronomical. The fact of the matter is, though, very unfortunately, there is a racket here. There's the black markets involved, and Peruvian mafia are also involved, and the rabbit hole goes very deep, right up to official people. And there's a lot of corruption that's involved, and it's a real shame that a lot of people have been strung along with this. But we just want to call it as it is and move on to other cases. And unfortunately, excuse the pun, but Maria, the biggest body, seems to be rearing her head now and again over the internet. And of course, there are battling opposing sides which want to push this information out. And let people know that these things are something very unusual when we've actually got the evidence to support that they're not. So it's a very intriguing case. It's a very long and drawn out one, unfortunately. But we've had to do several trips to Peru to deal with this head on. And obviously it's took a long time. And these things they went uncovered, basically, Grant, because the science document was actually up on a Russian website in Russian. And the same in France. And of course, what we've realised is that the Western world, America, the UK and the Western world, they're not understanding or realising this because there's a language barrier. But we've managed to break through the language barriers. We've interviewed the scientists. We've got their information. And we're glad to actually say we can actually conclude on this one now.
Did they see the bodies, the French and the Russian scientists?
They've got everything was sent to them, actually, by the people that had the bodies. And they were hoping that they would come back in support, but they didn't. They came back in quite the opposite, and were quite upset at the fact that these things have been manipulated through by utilising not only animal bones, but bones of infants and adults as well. And these have been dug up, they've been put together, they've been manufactured. And they provided the x-rays, the analysis, all the information to us. They said that this has been up on their website now for the last 3-4 months, but nobody, obviously, with the language barrier, nobody realised this.
Picked up on it.
It's just surprising what's out there that we might not know about simply because of language barriers.
So you spent a lot of money on this thing. You were down there, once or twice?
Oh, we were down there a few times, Grant. Yeah, we put our own money in the pot. And but the thing is that we wanted to try. We really thought that Maria would represent something quite unique and something special. She was very well put together. I can only assume by taxidermists. In fact, we've got information that there's actually more on the way. There's another body that's been manufactured, which is soon to, excuse the pun again, rear its head in the near future. And of course, whilst there's money on the table, which there is, because the black market will put $1 million price tag on these bodies, and whilst there's money on the table, these types of terrible acts are going to take place in Peru. People manufacturing these things because, like I say, unfortunately, Peru has a very poor economical situation, and of course, there's a lot of poverty there. And I understand people obviously need money, but at the same time, it's also encouraging people to dig up these graves. And an unfortunate thing is that it's damaging the Peruvian heritage, to be honest with you. And a lot of these things are sold and taken out of the country, which they simply just cannot deal with. And unfortunately, there's a very prominent black market in Peru where you literally can order. It's like a shop shelf that you can actually order. And in some cases, if they can't find it, they'll probably steal it from a museum.
Yeah. The thing that puzzles me, there's a couple of things. There's a couple of videos that are floating around now, guys that are claiming that they are part of this operation to make the bodies and stuff like that. And the one guy said they're using llama heads, which just to me was like, are you kidding me? I mean, the llama head doesn't look like anything like a human head. No. Has anybody seen these actual operations? Has anybody actually filmed the actual making of the bodies? Because what amazes me is, and you saw the bodies up close, you touched them. I mean, Can you see seams? Because, I mean, I know I've had a cut on my hand for 55 years, and you can still see the scar. How do you cover, if you're putting things together, how do you cover the seams that you would have in clothes and cars and stuff? Everything has seams. There doesn't seem to be any seams on this thing.
Yeah, well, I can tell you what is actually happening is there's some confusion over the investigation because there are around about 12 small bodies at 29 inches, which have small elongated heads. They have a cranial ridge, the small bodies, and the 3 fingers and 3 toes. Now, these things, even through just looking at from when we were examining them, we knew from the X-rays that these things were not alive, that they were manufactured. They didn't have any ball joints in legs or arms. They had no nasal passages, no lungs. Poor things wouldn't have been able to move. And of course, we recognized some of the bones were upside down, been placed in the wrong position. So we quickly ruled out all these small ones are manufactured. Now, when we're talking about the large ones, there's 2. There's a small child and a Marine, which is a female full-size body. But there has been manipulation. The eye sockets have been filed to make them wider. All extra human bones have been added to the fingers. Now, what happened is that we took, and the same for the hand, for the feet as well, with the 3 toes. There's been manipulation where the actual bones have been filed down. The actual 2 of the toes have been taken off. 2 of the thumb and the finger have been taken off. And of course, we've got the evidence to support that. But what happened is that when we took DNA samples, we thought there was it's coming back as a hectoplasmic mutation. And we're thinking, wow, that's really fascinating. Maybe it might be suggested in then why she might have 3 fingers and 3 toes. In fact, that's not the actual case. Now we know the full story is that where we took the samples from, it was getting a sample of 2 different types of humans, because the 2 different types of bones from 2 different types of humans, and we're coming in one lot of DNA testing. It's just completely thrown the charts all over the place and looking like there's a hectoplasmic mutation. And of course, what that in fact is it's a combination of 2 human bones in one DNA sample. And of course, the actual covering, the heavy covering of diatomaceous earth, also helps covering over certain areas where there has been manipulation. But we've managed to get photographs of the manipulation, and we've also got confirmation from people who have been involved in the manipulation, and where some more of these bodies are actually held.
Excellent. And when you were at Contact in the Desert, you had told me that you had somebody who claimed they had another hand or something, a mummified hand, and Von Däniken was interested in following up the case. Did anything come from other stuff like Von Däniken? Is he given up on this, or what happened after?
Yeah, well, we're working with Eric. Eric's going to be releasing a new book next year, and around about end of October this year, we're going to be working with Eric and providing all the information that we've got. Eric's been looking into these things as well. Is not just this, but other stories that are coming out from South America. The unfortunate thing is, when actually looking for hard evidence, sometimes they tend to sort of just fizzle away. However, I'm not going to dispute the fact that there may be some anomalies out there. Absolutely. The problematic is that when we've got people making such fantastic hoaxes, that we've really got to step up the investigation process to make sure we thoroughly eliminate those. Otherwise, we are going to dirty the waters, and it's a real shame.
Great work. Last question, I guess. What are you up to? What's your investigation now? We got less than a minute.
Well, I'm just preparing to head over to Eureka Springs. I'm over there in a couple of weeks, as you know. But we also realized 26 miles away from where we are at Eureka Springs is a very high magnetic anomaly. So we're going to be taking a trip there, Grant. So we never know. We might just get something again. But we're also going to be going to Starworks USA in November. With Paula Harris, and we're looking forward to talking there as well. But we're just collating all the information, and we're currently working very hard on our app, and of course the Delta Lambda software, which is up on Indiegogo at the moment.
Beautiful. So I'll see you in Starworks. I'm be lecturing there as well, and looking forward to the new stuff you've got. Congratulations on all the work you've done. You're fantastic. I'm honored to have talked to you and have known you.
Oh, that's wonderful, Grant. I look forward to seeing you there, and thanks very much.
Thanks a lot. Okay. Send it back to you, Race.
All right, Grant, thank you so much. You've been listening to the Cameron Files with Grant Cameron, exclusively on KGRARadio.com. Any rebroadcast or duplication of this program or program content without express written permission from the KGRA, DB, or Grant Cameron himself is strictly prohibited. The Cameron Files, in direct cooperation with the internet website, presidentialufos.com. We'll see you next week.